Core Keeper's finally available on Xbox Series S and X, PlayStation 5 and coming to the other consoles soon. And of course its 1.0 is out on PC. Today I'm giving you though a tips video, mistakes I made in my 230 hours of playing Core Keeper. Going to be going into the mechanics of growing your own food, cooking, skills and a lot more, so make sure you subscribe for more Core Keeper content. Do leave a like if you find the video useful, and let's go. Avoid these mistakes in Core Keeper. Don't stop growing crops. You may have set up your farms, you may have got yourself sprinklers and you're pretty much good to go now. You might have cooked yourself 200 of your favourite meals specifically for your class, but ideally you want to get as much as you can of the gold crops. These will only start growing and unlocking as you increase your farming skill, and they are pretty vital in exploring some of the late game areas. You probably worked out by now that you don't necessarily get a 1-for-1 ratio every time you harvest a crop, i.e. you're not guaranteed to get a seed. That does become a bit easier as you progress, but as you can see it's still only a 25% chance extra of gaining a seed. And whatever you do, make sure that you end up at this point so you can unlock Expert Gardener when you get to here. You will have a smaller chance of growing some golden actual plants, but this will increase it massively. What you don't want to do is pretty much make 200 meals as I said, and then basically don't touch farming again for a while. You don't want it to be a farming simulator if that's not your bag, and you can actually gain quite a bit of experience by making sure you harvest any plants as you're exploring. But the differences in making food with the golden stuff versus normal are huge. A hearty berry pudding gives 2.8 health every second for 20 seconds, 25 max health for 10 minutes and 24 food. But look at the huge difference you get when you actually make the same meal out of the golden crops. A 6.3 health every second for 20 seconds is double the amount you had before, but more importantly, max health has increased to 72 now. That is huge. You also gain another perk and ability, 24% physical melee damage for 10 minutes. This is why it's so crucial that as soon as you're able to, start trying to get as many points into the golden crops, and this will really help you out, especially late game. You seem to have maybe the right decent armour, you're still getting owned by bosses, or just exploring, you probably need to invest a bit more time in making sure you get the right foods. And as always, this is a basic tip that everyone and their mum has probably told you now, but never cook the same type of food. Instead, always go ahead and mix and match. You gain much more benefits and buffs, you don't lose anything when you do this, and there's no real benefit from making the same meal. Kind of wish there was. It would be cool in the future if they did give some sort of reason why you would go ahead and make the same meal out of the same stuff. Maybe increase the amount of food it gives at least. But yeah, it's just not worth your time. Always combine, based on your class, what's going to be more beneficial. The food can be a bit overwhelming, not going to lie. There's over 100 different recipes, so trying to work out which ones are more suitable, etc. is always a bit of a pain. So do spend some time. As soon as you do get enough crops to start growing or enough to cook, as soon as you start getting enough crops to actually grow, make sure you go and try all the different combinations. But in short, you come to realise what each one does. In fact, that's pretty much the only reason to go ahead and at least cook one of the same in both slots, as that will give you the main use of that item. That way you're not getting confused about which is giving you whatever it is, either mana regen or extra health. It is a bit of a pain in the butt getting enough of the actual scarlet to go ahead and make a lot of these sprinklers, but I definitely think it's worth setting yourself up a decent garden. And you can apply that same logic to pretty much every skill. In the early days you'll quickly see that your running and exploration is pretty much getting boosted because you're doing that the most. And then usually followed by mining. But it's definitely worth making sure you get enough crafting skills maxed out as well. Again, you might have absolute tons of the ores and stuff that you think you need, but it's always a good idea to go ahead and craft some more. It does look like you get more bonus crafting points when you craft something really powerful, particularly like idols and summoning items, and especially early game, if you manage to go ahead and mine yourself like 1,000 stone or clay or dirt, go ahead and use it and craft stuff. Chances are you're always going to be doing some sort of base building. At the very least, craft lots of stone floors, stone walls and other items you might need for your mega base build a bit later, and that way you can gain some easy crafting skills early. You do get to the point in Core Keeper where you're just like, I don't need to really bother anymore. I've got enough ingots to do what I want with. But your crafting gives you armor protection, extra bonus, and you can get some really good stuff as well, like extra items when you craft. or reduction in how much stuff costs to go ahead and repair. But the best one for me is trying to increase how much you can get a polished jewelry item eventually once you get close to the max of crafting. Polished items have much better stats than their regular ones. So this is another reason why you shouldn't ignore any of your stats just because you've got a lot of something. And for that reason as well, don't go ahead and sell all your crops to traders just to generate some quick profits. One heartberry is going to get you 1 coin. But sadly, you don't get an increase in coins just because you've crafted it into a meal. Instead, it's better to go ahead and just craft food as much as you can, because again, that's going to increase your cooking skill. And the more your cooking skill gets increased, the more chance that you will get also rare meals. And by the time you get to the late game and you really do have enough surplus of food, and you're not too worried about your cooking skill, you'll be getting more rare meals, more rare crops, and this means you can sell it for even more actual coins, which you can then go ahead and use to try and get your upgrades, since it costs so much to go ahead and get some of your gear to the right level. Also, don't skip on fishing. This is something I did in my first playthrough because the minigame for it was quite obnoxious, a bit like Stardew Valley. It's much easier now, although you can default back to the original way of fishing in the game settings. Otherwise, just click on the button, it will throw the fishing rod in the water where you see the bubbles rising, and then go ahead and you've got a chance of getting some more fish. You can fish in any water source, but you've got better chance of getting fish when you see the actual bubbles rising in the center. Not only will you get a chance of getting fish, but ores, other junk, and even special gear. The better your fishing rod, the better loot that you'll get. And you can craft a bunch of different baits and stuff. To get the most out of fishing, you will need to go and defeat the 5th boss, and that's Asios, who lives in the Asios wilderness. He'll give you a summoning item, and you can have the NPC fisher trader come and live with you, who sells you lots of goodies to get the most out of fishing. Early fish that you'll catch, and not rare ones, will generally give you similar buffs to the food that you're already getting in the early stages. But again, as you progress through the biomes, fish in different spots and water, you can get a really good chance of getting rarer fish, and these give incredible bonuses and buffs. Combine them with golden crops and stuff, and you really are looking at some of the best foods you can get in the game, which will definitely be needed by the time you get to endgame. There are some great content creators making content for Core Keeper, and they've been doing it for years, me included, but that means some of our content is now out of date, particularly in what bosses you have to take on. Now you won't know as a brand new player, but basically they swapped out this guy, Madagus, as this used to be the Hive Mother statue, i.e. the Hive Mother was crucial to your progress. Hive Mother now is kind of basically a side boss. Hopefully you won't have missed it, but do look out for the wall actually opening when you've defeated these 3. It does have a snazzy effect whenever you go and put the last stone in, but you never know, it's easy to get distracted, or you might not realise what it does, or maybe you didn't even make it to the boundary wall. But there is a boundary. If you played the free demo that was available on Steam, it encompasses pretty much the first 4 bosses that you can fight, and it's just kind of outside on this edge here. So to explore other places like the jungles, the deserts, as well as the crystal caves and more, you are going to need to remove that wall, and that means you have to go and defeat all 3 of the bosses. It sounds simple enough, but you'd be surprised how many people are asking how or what they should be doing. Just running around, roaming, trying to find something that isn't there. So if you're struggling, make sure you defeated all 3 of these bosses. Use the core to tell you what direction the next boss will be. Chat to him a couple times and it'll always tell you the general direction. And take advantage of absolutely the tracking stones or the scanners that you can use to scan where bosses are. These are relatively cheap to make in the early stages by looking in the cores, and it's definitely better to do that so you're not wasting too much time going in a completely different wrong direction. When it comes to farming bosses, which is a mechanic you're encouraged to do as there are some unique drops that each one will have or more chance of getting certain gear, I would say do it sooner rather than later, as a lot of the gear that drops does become pretty obsolete pretty quickly. It does take quite a lot of your coins in the early days though to go ahead and buy the summoning idols. You can buy 3 from trader before it ends a bit of time needing to replenish them. I would say yeah, once you've killed it once, maybe go and recoup, get some more potions, food, and maybe look up some of my guides that I've got incoming or other ways to basically take on bosses easier. And take the boss on at least 3 times before probably moving on. Glurch has the sticky stick staff, which is pretty powerful. You've also got a necklace and a ring, with the necklace only available from Glurch, and a slime pet. There are some other items as well that really only have big chances of dropping from the bosses, with it really being tiny anywhere else. And they can offer some pretty strong upgrades in terms of armor pieces especially. But yeah, you don't want to waste all of your coins on just constantly farming the first 3 or 4 bosses. Again, just because so much of it I've become redundant, or you may use them coins for later upgrading better gear. Something I've said in a few of my other videos, but basically you'll see tons of great ideas that you can pretty much generate free resources and drops. Some of them are definitely more useful than others. There's no harm at all if you've got some of the ground covering that you've managed to find in setting small ones up for cavelins and slimes. But it's not until really you get to the later stages where you've got more of the advanced cavelins, and then you can mix and match setting up proper automated mob farming places, that things get a little bit more interesting. Like, yes, you will get resources and some of them can be great, but still relatively small amounts, and the drops that you get from certain enemies, they're pretty rare still. So basically start small. Don't build a mega structure because you watch some video or guide. Make sure you're within your means and you're not wasting too much time getting stuff ready. When it comes to ores and mining them, absolutely set up a couple drills on any deposits near your base that you find. But especially look for any tin and perhaps gold. There's so much copper all around you anyway, and obviously the tin you find in the clay ones. What I would say is don't go mad again putting a ton of drills on each deposit. If your drills are limited in supply, make sure you utilise them or save them for things like tin, or if you have set them up on a copper deposit and you found some later deposits like tin or gold, go and take some away. Tin is just the slightly more rarer resource compared to copper, and gold is more valuable. You don't get more ore from the drills utilising more, instead it just decreases the time that you'll get ore from them. Each one of these has 1800 pieces of ore inside. With 2 drills running, it will take 64 hours for it to pretty much wipe out. With 8 of the basic drills, 22 hours. And here's another one, I would say it's not always worth making the upgraded ones. Again, they just decrease the time, so instead of 22 hours, it will take 15 hours, which is a 7-hour saving, but really you're getting quite a lot of resources from that, so it might not be worth using up your scarlet on drills. Instead, focus on them on sprinklers. Last thing to note, in your world generation, if you set your world to pretty much have it high or extreme with the resources or the ores, you'll have tons everywhere, so you might not need to set up as many of these as you normally would. If you are on base game or anything lower, then yeah, it's going to be essential that you set up drills around boulders. You can of course set up smelters directly to it once you get electricity and some grabber arms. But yeah, do remember to put a marker down on your map so you always know to return to some of these places, just in case you forgot you actually put some drills down. There's nothing worse than running out of wood, so think carefully about starting up your wood farms the minute you can craft some drills or find some. On the right here is the most basic, but it's also one of the most efficient, waiting for the root to grow either in the 4 directions with 4 drills around. Eric and my buddy set one up with this gleamwood on the left, and that's pretty efficient and pretty much the simplest. Lots of seeds, and then you can block off underneath so it only grows in one direction straight into the drills. But there are a lot more other methods, and you can find this on the wiki if you need more help, although I'm going to be doing a more detailed guide showing you actually in game how to do some of this. But you can basically combine and make mega roots in a certain way, and you end up getting a lot more wood. It all just depends how far you want to take it, how interested you are in automation. But definitely do this early, because you'll always be running out of wood in the early days unless you're stopping and chopping every piece that you come across. So even if it's the most basic, make sure you set one up. There's so many different armor sets that you can get in the early game, especially when you obviously start looking at your anvil and you can craft yourself. I would say the vast majority of these though, you kind of don't want to necessarily bother with, especially again if it's going to cost you vital resources. For sure, if you're going bog standard melee route and you're not a fan of ranged or magic, then the more armor you've got in the early game the better. But the drops you'll get from just simply killing creatures, you should get a ton of different armor sets dropping. And exploration is the most important. Finding loot chests, encampments, that's going to be your best bet. 9 times out of 10, the stuff that does drop is always going to be pretty much better than at whatever stage you're currently at. Within reason, these armors only drop in certain biomes, so you're never going to find like a really OP piece of armor in the wrong biome. This is where farming some of the bosses a few times at least is going to be beneficial, as you generally get a good chance of dropping some of the parts. But my first run of Core Keeper, I wasted way too many resources, pretty much crafting every armour and weapon and then quickly discarding them because I got the next unlock or I found gear much better. You're more than likely going to find more ranger gear or more stuff that you can utilise until you get better gear. So in the beginning days you're either wearing copper, maybe bronze, and working your way up to iron. 15 max health, 10 armour and 4.8 extra damage. And that's a level 7 item. But just look at the difference you can get when you go ahead and find stuff like the Carapace breastplate, only one level above, and it's got 27 max health, 15 armour. Stone chestplate, which is a relatively common drop, 25 max health, 12 armour, and a reduction in boss damage. And that's a level 7 as well. So I would honestly skip copper and bonds as long as you are exploring and looting as much as possible and getting into combat and fighting. Exceptions being once you get to maybe late game, particularly if any of these have got some really cool buffs. And it's all dependent on whether or not that class is going to sit with you. There's not much point in having a critical hit armor set if you're kind of using a slow based range attack. So yeah, I would work towards basically skipping sets. Ignore the copper armor set altogether. The raincoat and the rubber boots are probably the most useful there for helping you take on Glurch as well as Gorm. And there's only a tiny amount difference in armor. Accessories are always good if you're looking for melee classes like shields. I would focus more on making sure you've got plenty of healing potions, food, and they'll give you certainly more buffs that are easier to make and do, rather than waste resources on stuff like bronze that you'll not use again, and it's not worth really upgrading over time. In fact, I would say if you can, utilise a lot of the armours that you come across and find as you loot. If you can make it all the way to the Aesios Wilderness and get enough to start crafting Scarlet, then this is where the armor sets get a little bit better. But it has to match up with your style, with the pretty much Scarlet stuff being based on critical hit chances more. The Octarine set being a pretty much all-in-one, with different bonuses for mining, melee and ranged, with your attack speed increasing for every percentage of missing health that you have. But yeah, not exactly sexy. More valuable is making sure you always get the next pickaxe. That's going to help you progress much more. But some of the perks for some of the other armor sets like the Galaxite, I don't think they're that amazing. Yes, they're going to give you more max health and armor, and I'm not saying skip all of them, like I said, every other one, but this does more damage while you're at max health, and a lot of times you are going to get hit, and that costs quite a lot to make this with the Galaxite and the Octarine bars needed. And the bonuses don't really change either. The Solarite has the same bonus, although it does have the added benefit of having life steal, but only working if you really are using a lot of melee weapons. So yeah, it might seem a bit counterproductive saying don't craft stuff. For sure, if you're really into mining, you've got a ton of resources, you might as well. You can always go ahead and sell them or dismantle them for parts later, but I definitely think it's worth skipping the first few sets. Just explore in what you can. The basic wood armor set is probably going to be good enough until you can either craft the raincoat set and mix and match with whatever else you have. Concentrate on getting your crops up and getting superfoods, making sure you always got plenty of potions, and utilising any accessories you find. When it comes to the weapons, that's a bit different. For sure, some of them can be quite powerful, but again, you'll find plenty of other weapons as you progress, so it's not always worth wasting resources. Is it really going to complement your style and make you a better player, utilising a sword that's going to give you maybe 2 or 5 extra damage, but still going to cost you a lot of your resources? Now, I did say earlier, it's definitely worth saving your coins as you might want to upgrade weapons, but the fact is some of the upgrading is pretty much not worth it. So much of it costs a lot of your resources as well, and you don't often get that many actual benefits from some gear, not until the later stages. You'll get the upgrade bench once you make it to the Aesios Wilderness, but just be warned, look out for how much it actually upgrades things like magic, as it costs more mana to use, which is obviously a bit of a problem if you've got a low mana pool. I'm not saying don't upgrade, because obviously I just did say save your coins for it, but definitely pick and choose some of your most special weapons that you think are going to be good for later game. And that's it. Any more help you need with Core Keeper, go and check out the rest of my videos, and I'll be back for more soon. Until next time, Ratbags, laters.